2. Luke chapter 2. Brother Dave, it's after Christmas. Yeah, there's more to Luke chapter 2 than you think. Charlie Brown did not, or excuse me, Linus did not read all of Luke 2. So turn with me, if you will, to Luke chapter 2. We're going to be picking up in the second half of that chapter in a few minutes. I want to talk to you about purpose. And there's a story that goes around about a philosophy class that had a hard professor, and the class was just scared to death about what the final was going to look like. They knew it was going to be long and difficult and just incredibly difficult to pass this particular philosophy professor's final exam. I've faced a couple of those final exams. I've graded a lot of those exams. I can tell you that, yes, they can be difficult, but this particular professor at the end of this philosophy class didn't give them a study guide. He just said, know everything we talked about in class. And he asked a very important, and he only had one question on the test. They came in, the test was given out. It had one question. And that question consisted of one word. Why? Several of the students added several pages as they wrote their answer. What an incredibly immense question. Why? When we talk about philosophy, it's one of those most important questions. It goes to the very nature of the areas of philosophy. Why? One student, who hadn't been the star student the whole time, wrote, "Why not?" question mark, and turned it in. He received the only A in the class. Sometimes it's important for us to know our purpose. It is important for us to understand why it is we do what we do. Walter Savage Landor wrote this: "Men like nails lose their usefulness when they lose direction and begin to build." Ralph Buchanan said, "When you walk with purpose, you collide with destiny." And Washington Irving said, "Great minds have purposes. Others have wishes." I want us to think today along the idea of a purpose-filled life. Our text today will be Luke 2, 21 through 38. "And when the 8 days had passed before his circumcision, his name was then called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days for their purification according to the law of Moses were completed, they brought him up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male that opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice according to what was said in the law of Moses, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon. And this man was righteous and devout, looking for the consolation of Israel. And the Holy Spirit was upon him, and it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came in the Spirit into the temple, and when the parents brought in the child Jesus to carry out for him the custom of the law, then he took him into his arms and blessed God and said, 'Now, Lord, you are releasing your bondservant to depart in peace according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, a light of revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel.' And his father and mother were amazed at the things which were being said about him. And Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, 'Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rise of many in Israel, and for a sign to be opposed, and sword will pierce even your own soul, to the end that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed.' And there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years and had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple, serving night and day with fasting and prayer. At that very moment she came up and began giving thanks to God, and continued to speak of him to all who were looking for the redemption of Jerusalem. I want us to look at these two people who were waiting there in the temple. The day comes for them to... They've gone through the 8 days of ritual cleansing, and they called Jesus' name Jesus, because that's what the angel told them to. It's amazing. When an angel gives you that, that's even better than the baby book, isn't it? Angel comes and says, call his name Jesus. And so guess what they did? They did. After 8 days, just as it was custom, he was circumcised and was named Jesus. And after 33 days, they bring him to the temple, because now Mary can go to the temple with them. And they bring him, and they offer the offerings that she's supposed to bring. She's supposed to bring to the center meeting an offering. Now, she's supposed to bring a lamb. But she doesn't. Why doesn't she? Because they were poor. They couldn't afford a lamb. So they bring a couple of little birds, a couple of pigeons. They figured everybody in Israel could at least catch a couple of pigeons. And so they go catch a couple of pigeons, and they bring them to the temple for her purification. And as they walk in, there's this guy by the name of Simeon. Now, from every indication we get, he was an older man, a man who had been there for quite some time. He was looking forward to Christ. He had been praying about the salvation of Israel. He had been praying that the Messiah would come. He had been asking God for many years, Lord, let me see. Let me see your salvation. And Mary and Joseph walk in, and his purpose is fulfilled. And he begins to say some things. Now, Lord, you're releasing your bondservant to depart in peace, for mine eyes have seen your salvation. I want to ask you a question. Is the purpose of your life to have seen the salvation that God has offered? Is the purpose of your life, are you living such a purpose? Are you living so that your life reflects to those around you the fact that Christ is the salvation of the Messiah? Imagine if we were to live with the kind of purpose that Simeon did, with the kind of devotion that Simeon did, with the kind of one-mindedness to see the salvation that the Lord has given. Now, we've already seen it. Christ has come. We've got the easy part. We don't have to faith that God is going to send somebody. All we have to do is faith that God has sent somebody. All we have to do is believe the most documented fact in antiquity. All we need to do is believe. Is it your purpose to see that salvation in the lives of those around you? Have you come to the point of calling on God, Lord, I pray even now that you'll let me see the salvation of, insert name of person who's important to you here. Our youth this past summer were challenged to pray every day by name for one person to be saved. And once they're saved, pick somebody else. It's not hard to find lost people to pray for. Are you praying? Are you honestly devoting yourself to a life of purpose that's going to cause them to see Jesus in you, and having seen Christ to come to Him? Simeon did. Are you? Not only that, Simeon also says this child is appointed for the rise and fall of many in Israel. You see, there's a choice that has to be made when Christ comes into our lives. When Christ comes in, there are things that we have to get away from. There are things that Christ is going to call us to leave behind. My wife and I have been on a new eating plan since August. This week has been difficult. This month has been difficult. This morning I was really excited only to be up 0.6 of a pound. I was excited about that. This month isn't over. It's still going to be difficult. But you know what? There's some things in order for me to have the weight loss that I have, in order to see what I want to see, in order to reach the purpose that I've purposed. I've got to leave some things behind. There are some foods that I've got to walk away from. Things I love. But I know that they're incompatible with me staying on an eating plan. One of the challenges we've had is there are certain foods that I love that we've had around the house for the last month. And that's hard. There are certain things that you've had around the house that are incompatible with your stance for Christ. Are you ready to walk away and leave? Growing up, I had a friend who, because of their religious beliefs, chose not to have a television. I couldn't imagine growing up with a television, without a television. But his parents chose to walk away from one because they found it incompatible with Christ. I'm not suggesting necessarily that, but I'm also not suggesting that you put it off limits. Is your sense of purpose so great that it's going to cause you to walk away? Is it going to cause you to rise or to fall? Simeon said that Christ coming in would be a sign to be opposed, that a sword would pierce even Mary's own soul. We know what happened. Christ would teach such a way. The religious leaders would conspire against him with the Romans and have him crucified. And Mary would stand there and watch her child die in one of the most horrible ways ever devised by man. The most horrible form of capital punishment ever devised. Literally suffocating in midair. Showed the hearts. Is your sense of purpose that specific that it's going to cause those around you to make a choice? Is it going to cause those around you to choose whether they're going to be on the Lord's side or against Him? Is your sense of purpose that way? Simeon wasn't the only one there in the temple. There was also a prophetess, a lady by the name of Anna. Now I want to take a moment and think about Anna for a second. She was advanced in years, the Bible tells us. She had lived with her husband 7 years after their marriage. Now, at what age did girls typically get married in first century Palestine? 13. So, she and her husband lived together for 7 years after her marriage. So that would make her 20. And she became a widow at 20. What a depressing thought. Most of us can't imagine being married by 20, but certainly being married and a widow by 20 is kind of a depressing thought. Surely there's got to be another man who won't pick her up as a wife. But you know what? She devotes herself to the Lord, and she devotes herself, literally it says, she never left the temple, serving night and day with fasting and with prayers. She devoted herself in such a way as to be serving the Lord constantly. She's 84 years old. She's been doing this since she was 20. That means for 64 years she's lived as a widow, praying regularly in the temple, night and day. A fixture there. And by the way, did I mention she can't even go into the inner court? She can't even, not only could she not go into the Holy of Holies, which only the high priest could go into, or the Holy Place, she couldn't even go into the outer court, into the inner court. She could only stay in the outer court. But but she stayed there constantly. She stayed there constantly praying, praying, praying. Lord, let me see. Lord, let me see your redemption of Israel. Let me know you more. Is your purpose so great that it's all you need? The Bible presents us that was all she needed. Now, I'm sure she didn't fast the whole 64 years. But she was fasting regularly and praying regularly for 64 years. Starting when she was a very young girl, 20. I know they consider that's an adult. But that's still only 20. Imagine if you were to set, as a young adult, to the young people here, imagine you were to set your purpose to be Christ-like in such a way that when you get to be 84, you have that kind of a legacy. Imagine that you were to set the fact that you're going to make decisions that are going to put you in a position where when you look back as an old person, you can say, let me tell you how proud I am of what God did for me in my youth. Perhaps you're here in your middle age, or you're a little older middle age, or you're a little older middle age. I remember one time as a young and stupid minister of education announcing a senior adult event and saying that if you consider yourself a senior adult, say you're over 35, that you are welcome to come. As I look back, that sounds awfully young to me now. But imagine we were to start today in purpose, that our lives are going to be so focused on God, that He's all we need. Imagine that we were to start today in purpose, that we're going to watch for God's salvation and those around us, that we're going to pray for those who need it, that we're going to be prayer warriors, that we're going to be so into Christ that He's all we need. You know, you find when Christ calls you to give up something else, He's all you need. That's exactly what Anna felt. And she came in and saw Christ, and the Bible doesn't even say she held him. Now, I can't imagine a lady standing there not holding the baby. I know my wife would never, you can't get him within 20 feet of my wife without her holding the baby. That's just going to happen. But the Bible never says she did, but it does say she began giving thanks and talked about it to everybody who would listen. This was better than a grandchild. Have you ever gotten a new grandparent talking about their baby? They've got the best baby ever. Have you noticed that? Well, she comes in and starts telling about Jesus, and it's bigger than a grandchild. Because you know what? Christ is all she needs. She has seen God's salvation, and that's all she needed. That's all she wanted. That was her very purpose in life. So I want to ask you a hard philosophical question. What's your purpose? Or put another way, why? Are you living a life of purpose? Are you living for Christ? Are you living in such a way that Christ Himself is all you need? Are you living in such a way that you're going to cause people to make a choice? Are you looking forward to the salvation of those around you? I'm often asked as a pastor, how do I know what God's purpose is in my life? There's a Chinese proverb that says, if heaven made it, earth can find some use for it. You see, we have a purpose. God has put us here for a reason. You are not an accident. We have taught in our schools for almost a century that we are mere accidents of genetic biology. And I'm going to tell you that that's a lie. You were created for a purpose. You were created to find your relationship with Christ. You were created for the fact that Christ has died for you. You were created to have a relationship with God. What's your purpose? Do you have one? Or are you living aimlessly? The purpose of life is to exist. I'm going to tell you that life is too long to live without purpose. Life is too hard not to have a purpose. Life is too great of an adventure not to be according to God's purpose. So what's your purpose? What are you living for? And go back to that quote. From Washington Irving that I shared earlier. Great minds have purposes. Others have wishes. I sure do wish I was more like Christ. I sure do wish I had a prayer life like insert name of spiritual person over here. I sure do wish I could make a difference in the lives of those around me. I sure do wish Christ was all I need. Or is it? I will make a difference in those lives. I will pray for those in big ways. I will live in such a way that Christ is all in me. Which is it? As that professor asked, why? I gave that same kind of exam a couple times, teaching assistant. One of the questions was, who or what is God and who or what is man? And how do they relate? And I'm going to tell you that we were made for a purpose. We were made for a relationship with God. We were made to bring others into a relationship with God. Are you living according to your purpose? If not, I'm going to have a meditation here. As we sing, if you have a decision to make before God,